How are we doing? This is Fox back again, carrying on still with the deconstruction of my Sylenth track using my trance track using only Sylenth. There will be a link in the description to the video where I'll go through this track in its entirety. I'll go through all the patches in a little detail, but this is going to be going over today, this one which I'll call a mid pad. Just quickly, this project file is available if you want it to download directly through me for £10 British. If you're interested, get in touch. The link's in the description to my email address and my Twitter account. Okay, so yeah, I've soloed this patch. This is what we're going to be making today. Probably the best pad I've ever made in Sylenth. I'm going to show you it with the pad group and the sub bass so you can hear it as it sits in the track, because it really sounds good on its own, but when you hear these three together, in fact I'll just play the track up until the drop so you can hear it. Probably the best breakdown I've made, I say, using Sylenth. It sounds awesome to me. Everything sits really, really well. Took a little bit of EQing. This high pad, mid pad, pads, sub. Okay, right, we'll solo this mid pad again. I use it in two different places in the track. I've got some modulation. This modulation here, it says Xmod LFO1. What it is, it's the amount of LFO, destination we're sending to the cutoff. In some part of the tracks, you can hardly hear it. That part of the track, you can really hear the LFO at the start. So it's quite involved, this patch, so if I do go a bit quick, then you might have to go over it again. There's a lot to go over, there's a lot of modulation. So yeah, we are going to initialise this. As always when I'm making trance, I started with a saw wave. I've had 8 voices of unison on the first one. Kept it octave on 0, volume at maximum. Phase, stereo and pan, how they all come as standard. I'll push the phase around to about 120 degrees, so it's not starting at the start of the saw wave, it's starting sort of halfway through. I detune, oh sorry, the phase was on 0, it's the detune that was round to that amount. The detune round to about 3.6. Crank the polyphony up because it's a pad. I use a lot of notes in these chords. On the master group there's nothing. I've got everything that you can hear comes from Sylenth on this pad. And on the high pad also. I mean, there's a bit of sidechain compression. Nothing. Everything you can hear from these next two patches come from Sylenth. All the effects are internal. That's it, 8 voices of a saw wave, no reverb, no nothing. We'll set the amp envelope up for A. I had the attack at about 3.7, so the volume's going to come in gradually rather than being at maximum straight away. Slight delay in it, about 1/4 second. And then a tiny little bit of release, about 0.9 to 1. You can hardly hear that. I say oscillator A2, I pitched down 1 octave, and this was a square wave. I don't normally use square waves when I'm making pads, they sound a bit hollow to me, but because I only had 4 voices and the volume was down to about 3.2, it's an underlying part of the sound, it's not going to overpower anything. Phase, stereo and pan again, how they all come as standard, and this one is detuned to about 4. So without the square. And with. It's creating a sort of sub-element to the pad, just a lower part of the sound, as I say. With the volume down, it's not going to be the main part of the sound. We'll go ahead and set up the oscillators for part B now. The amp envelope was pretty much the same, just slightly less attack, around 3.2, same amount of release, about 0.9. And I used one sine wave. One sine wave, I say a sine wave with two voices. No detune, no phase, no stereo, no pan, all outcomes are standard, and volume on full. This one is down 1 octave as well. The sine wave is mixing with the square nicely, so just creating the low mid part of the sound. Okay, we'll go ahead and set the filters up. So the filter for part A is a low pass filter. I always use a low pass filter on a pad. It's a good way of creating movement, sort of sweeping it back and forwards with modulation. The cutoff I set to about 24 Hertz. Resonance dead zero, drive dead zero. Keep it on a 24 decibel per octave filter. Sounds a bit static at the minute, but we're going to use some modulation to open this up. And also the LFO. Doing that in effect. Part B is the same. It's a low pass filter. Slightly different settings. Resonance and drive still, they come as standard. On a 24 decibel per octave filter as well. But this one, the cutoff wants to start off at around 415 Hertz. Okay, we'll set the envelope up first quick. Now we'll do all the modulation, then we'll do the effects at the end. So yeah, this mod envelope 1, we're going to use it for two separate things. First of all, we're going to use it for cutoff A and B. We're going to use it to open the filter up like this, as I said. We're going to get it to do just that by way of an envelope. And the way you do that, the attack time specifies how long it takes for it to turn it round. This knob is how far you want the knob to turn. So we want it to go round to about 5.96, something like that. So not totally full. Sustain on full, so when it's open it stays there. No decay, no release, and as I say, we'll play with the attack time until we get it how we want it. You can hear that washing round now, opening the filter gradually. You could have a bit of release so it closes up over time. Not needed on this patch though. We'll set the LFO up now because the other two modulation destinations that I use are to do with the LFO. So we use an LFO to do the same thing to modulate the cutoff. It works in tandem with the filter. So wherever the filter position, wherever the cutoff is, wherever the cutoff knob is at that point, the LFO is going to wobble it from that point. So it's going to wobble it back and forward as the envelope opens it up. So same thing, cut off A and B. Destination amount, I had it around 2.7, 3, something like that. I don't know, triangle wave, I think these are best when you do it on a filter. It's a definite up and then down. And the rate I had set at 1/64, so it was quite quick. If you set the gain to start with at 1.14, we're going to modulate the gain with the same envelope that opens the filter up. So as the filter opens up, we're going to introduce the LFO so that you hear it towards the end of the notes. So this second box for mod envelope 1 is going to be the LFO 1 gain. And we want to push this positive to about 5. So it's going to go up 5 notches from its original position, which is 2. So it's going to swing all the way around to pretty much full. Sounds really fast at the minute because we've got the rate set over 1. We've got the rate set at 1/64, so it's 64th notes. It's very, very fast. We are now going to use mod envelope 2 to change the rate of the LFO over time as well. Pretty much the same envelope as what we've got for mod envelope 1, so it's following the same sort of curve as the filter opening and the volume for the LFO coming in. It's identical, in fact, just a tiny little bit release. We're going to set this to LFO 1 rate, and we're going to use it to turn the rate of the LFO down, so it's going to go from fast to slow as the filter opens up. And we're going to dial this destination amount -5. I had that on 1/64D, which is triplet, I think. There you go, starts off fast, 1/64, and gradually slows down to about 1/2, I think. Brilliant effect, that is. Really neat. Modulating the LFO gain and the rate along with the same time that the filter's opening up is a really, really, really neat effect. So some parts of the sound, I've got this destination amount here for the LFO 1 gain, so whether you hear the LFO or not. Some parts of the track I've got it on 0. LFO 1 rate. I had it on this one, LFO 1 gain. So at some parts I've got it on 0.63, so it's hardly inaudible. This part of the breakdown, you can really hear that LFO working. So a lot of modulation. I hope I explained it very well. It's really quite simple, really. We're opening the filter up, at the same time we're turning the volume of the LFO up, and we're slowing the LFO rate down. Pretty straightforward in my eyes. Sometimes get a bit complicated when you're modulating a modulator's parameters, but as I say, I hope I explained it well. Now it's just some effects just to help thicken the sound up. I use a chorus, as you could probably tell. The delay I kept on standard. The rate I pushed round to about 1.26 Hertz. Fair bit of feedback. I'll turn the chorus off. And with. Helps smudge the sort of higher aspects of the sound, the sawtooths that we've got going on in part A. The sawtooth and the square, sorry. I also use a delay, a reverb and a compressor. Left I add 1/4, right I add 1/8. If you see me using the delay and Sylenth, I pretty much always use this settings. Low cut, high cut I have on 0. Spread I add pretty much full. Feedback dead center where it comes, and a width on maximum. Works really well with these short stabby, well they're not short, they're half a bar. They're whole bar chords actually. 4 beats, and then it's got a bar rest, but the delay with the dry wet quite high, it's tailing it off until the next one starts. Real neat trick. Reverb we use as well. Reverb size, pre-delay, damp, width. Everything as it comes as standard, I just turned it on. Just accentuates the tail of the delay as well, and a compressor just to keep everything in check because we've got a lot of effects going on. The compressor ratio I had on 4/1. Threshold I pulled down to about -12 dB. Attack and release how they come as standard. There's a patch done. Dreamy LFO pad, that is. You could try different LFOs. Choose a pulse or square, gives it more of a gated effect. Sawtooth for a ramp. Sample and hold really doesn't work very well. Not try square, try saw does. Triangle's still the best. I'll play it with the rest of the other pad as well again so you can hear it. There you have it, Dreamy LFO. I don't know what I'm going to call it. I'll have to think of it in a minute. There's a lot going on in this pad. Sort of an LFO slash filter suite pad in it. I'll think of a decent name for it, but there you go. That is it anyway. As I said, this project file is available if you want it. Check the links. Check me out on Facebook and Google+. It's Sound Design Tutorials. Any questions about Sylenth, please feel free to ask. Same thing, email me or reach me on my Twitter or Facebook or Google+ accounts. But for now, that is it. In the next one, we'll be going over the high pad, the second part to this pad group. But for now, that's it. Okay, thanks again for watching. Cheers.